Burying children alive. Being born a bit different among the Kamiura would mean you're on your way to an early burial, an express lane to the afterlife. That was the reality for kids born to a tribe that believed in spirits of the forest and a unique life cycle. For them, maintaining harmony with the spirits was as important as making sure your Wi-Fi never goes down. This belief led to the rather extreme practice of burying children alive, a tradition that would make human rights activists facepalm. When a child was born with a few physical deformities or disabilities, the tribe thought that this was a sign of imbalance in the spiritual world, or an upcoming doom for the community. To the Kamiura, physical deformities were like receiving a spiritual spam email, unwanted and a sign of bad things to come. The tribe believed that they needed to take drastic measures to appease the spirits and avoid the community equivalent of a spiritual audit. Burying children with deformities alive was their way of hitting delete on the spiritual spam email, aiming to restore harmony. This practice was less about cruelty and more about their version of crowd control, but in a way that would make any modern society gasp in horror. Fortunately, the Kamiura have since realized that burying kids alive might be a tad too extreme, even by their standards, so they stopped doing it eventually. Sky burial. For the people of Tibet, your final destination as you die isn't a nice cloud in heaven, but the belly of a vulture. In that part of the world, they say goodbye through sky burials, or jator. Sky burials aren't as literal as they sound. Tibetan communities gather to bid farewell to one of their own, not by burying them in the ground or cremating them, but by sending you off to be served on a platter for the local feathered scavengers. If you're a Tibetan who had just recently kicked the bucket, the entire community will arrange an entire ceremony for your burial. Monks respectfully handle your body as they recite prayers and chants to create a solemn atmosphere. From there, your body is carried to a designated sky burial site, often a remote area higher up in the plateau. At the site, your body gets dismembered to make the dining experience more convenient. Tibetans see vultures as sacred creatures with an equally holy duty of taking you to the afterlife. But for these feathered foodies, you're probably just a free meal ticket. They only have to perch nearby, like waiting for the waiter to bring out the next course at a fine dining restaurant featuring human flesh. The tradition sounds spiritual, but it's also practical because Tibetans don't have wood to waste for cremation. They also live in such rugged and rough terrain that digging a grave is like carving a sculpture with a knife. So in a way, it's a two-way relationship between the two parties. The people get to dispose of their dead properly, meanwhile the vultures get a 5-star dining experience without lifting a wing. Kanamara Matsuri. You've probably seen different religions and cultures worshipping unique idols, but you've probably never seen anyone worshipping a phallus, which is a fancy word for penis. Kanamara Matsuri, known as the Festival of the Steel Phallus, is one of the oddest religious festivals in Kawasaki, Japan, as people celebrate it with the same enthusiasm as an erect, well, you get the idea. The root of this festival goes back to the early 1600s, when sex workers would visit the Kanayama Shrine to pray for protection against sexually transmitted diseases. As more people started visiting the shrine, the practice became a general celebration focused on prayers for fertility, safe childbirth, and peaceful marriages. Today, it's more about spirituality and a good sense of humor. The celebration takes place on the first Sunday of April as the streets of Kawasaki turn into a parade. People carry large penis-shaped portable shrines to parade them all over the streets. Visitors and tourists are often left with awe and amusement, surrounded by a sea of dicks. Besides the parade, the festival is filled with phallus-themed decorations, souvenirs, and food. Eating a banana in front of your friends can feel awkward, but at this festival, you're not just eating a banana, you're munching on a penis-shaped popsicle. Aside from praying for harmonious marriages and healthy pregnancies, the festival raises awareness about sexual health and supports HIV research. So, amidst the profane-filled laughter, there's a strong message that breaks down taboos. Sati. You may think that being married means till death do us part, but an old Hindu practice took marriage a step further by ensuring that not even death can separate you. That's why widows were required to yeet themselves into flames in a practice called sati, taking the ride or die concept too seriously. In ancient India, marriage was not just a union of two individuals, but was the merging of destinies. It was basically a way of saying you share the same fate as your husband. So when a man died, especially in families belonging to high social standings, it was believed that marriage extended even beyond death. Wives were expected to follow their husbands into the afterlife, even if it meant playing the ultimate trust fall into an open flame. So as the husband's body was roasting in the funeral pyre, the widow was supposed to hop in to join the fiery festivities. This act was seen as a demonstration of devotion and loyalty to the husband in a society that's always been patriarchal. Culturally, sati was tied to beliefs of honor and purity. A woman who performed sati symbolized virtue and fidelity, like winning a community award, Most Dedicated Spouse of the Year. But it was also believed that this act cleansed the couple of their sins, ensuring their reunion in the afterlife. So if your husband was particularly naughty in life, it's your duty as a wife to die in the flames to scrub his record clean. The problem was that some women weren't ready to become human s'mores burning over an open flame. There were records of widows pushed into pyres against their will, sparking moral outrage during the British occupation of India. Seeing this as brutal, even for a country with its fair share of intense traditions, the British abolished sati in the early 1800s. Finger amputation. Let's say you're a member of the Dani tribe, and you visited home after being away in the city for a long time. You bumped into your Aunt Betty. Your aunt, who had just lost her husband, isn't talking about her new haircut, but her amputated finger. This tribe takes mourning to a different level, right down to the fingertips. In the highlands of Papua, Indonesia, when a Dani woman loses a loved one, she also literally loses a piece of herself. Usually, the upper part of the finger gets lopped off to express sorrow and pay tribute to the dead as a physical and permanent reminder of the person they've lost. The idea is that physical pain and the loss of a body part serve as a metaphor for the emotional pain that comes with losing a loved one. But it's not a casual process where you get a knife and chop a part of your finger. Instead, you go through a ritual where a family member amputates the finger. Off goes the tip, and the wound is cauterized to stop the bleeding, symbolizing the start of the healing process for the family. It's like hitting the reset button, allowing you to move on, but with more fire and blood. The amputated finger doesn't get tossed aside like a clipped fingernail. Instead, it's dried and preserved, serving as a weird token to keep around your home. Bullet ant glove. If you're part of the Satire Mawe tribe in Brazil, manhood doesn't come in the form of circumcision or your first beer, but by having your hands feasted on by bullet ants. It gives the saying, "no pain, no gain," a different meaning. The tribe makes the transition to manhood as painful as possible for young boys. They must face the bullet ant glove. More than just your regular mittens. They're woven leaves filled with bullet ants. Now, there's a good reason why they're called bullet ants. They have the most painful sting out of all the insects in the world, as getting stung by one is like getting a 3-inch nail hammered through your flesh. One sting from a bullet ant is already painful enough, but these kids have to endure numerous bites to prove their strength and courage. They show they're man enough to take a bullet for the tribe. In this instance, they take multiple bullets, like they're caught in a machine gun crossfire. The practice isn't a one-time affair because it could happen up to 20 times over several months. The process begins with the boys going through a preparation ritual. Luckily, they're given a natural sedative that helps them endure the pain. Then they slip their hands into these gloves for about 10 minutes while engaging in a ceremonial dance. It's like the worst hot potato game, but with ants. What makes the experience worse is that a single bullet ant sting can last up to 24 hours. You'll have to go through an entire day with your hands full of bullet holes. At the end of it, there's a profound sense of pride and accomplishment for enduring the pain. Hanging coffins. Instead of finding yourself 6 feet under when you die, you end up hanging on cliffs, joining the Igorot community's most unique home decor project, the Hanging Coffins of Sagada in the Philippines. But getting your cliffside afterlife crib isn't as easy as hammering a few nails into a wall. The process begins before death, with elderly Igorots who sense the ticking clock of mortality. They carve their coffins from hollowed logs, making woodworking a death-prepping hobby. Think of it as a morbid twist on DIY projects, like picking out the perfect bed, but this one's for your eternal slumber. Once they've passed away, their bodies are tucked into these handmade masterpieces in a fetal position, symbolizing their return to the earth as they come into the world. It's like the ultimate return to sender. The entire community pitches in to carry the coffin to the cliffside. This isn't just a sad procession, but it's a ceremonial event full of rites and prayers, like a combination of a parade and a literal cliffhanger. Securing the coffins involves ropes and wooden stakes, making it both a construction feat and a tourist attraction. Visitors from all over come to snap photos of this high-altitude marvel. The Igorots have their reasons for this practice, which are both symbolic and practical. They place their loved ones between heaven and earth by hanging the coffins. This gives a literal sense of hanging around, so their spirits are within reach, fostering a close bond with their ancestors. Plus, it's a slick move to keep wild animals and grave robbers at bay, giving them a sense of home security even in the afterlife. Turning of the bones. You may think that your ancestors are up in heaven watching over you, but the people of Madagascar believe that they're still chilling in their graves as decomposing bodies. But that hasn't stopped them from playing dress-up with their corpses in an event called the Turning of the Corpses. For the people of Madagascar, their ancestors are still present, hanging out and watching things. So to keep these spirits happy, they give their bodies a makeover that would put Hollywood stylists to shame. They dig their ancestors out of their graves every 5 or 7 years, depending on the family. From there, they decide it's time to make things interesting by giving their corpses new clothes and freshening them up with a spray of perfume. It's their way of making their ancestors feel pampered, even in the afterlife. Imagine your great-great-grandma sporting the latest fashion trends and smelling like a summer breeze. But the entire event isn't a sad one. Instead, it's a family reunion, complete with sounds and dances. The families dance with the coffins, moving to Madagascar's latest hits, like they're dancing to the newest TikTok trends. As they dance, the bones inside jiggle and rattle, adding a new twist to the phrase, shaking your bones. It all goes back to their deep-rooted family ties, as they believe that honoring their dead this way allows them to reconnect with family history. So the next time you feel a slight chill, it might just be your ancestor wondering when their next makeover is due. Taipusam piercings. If you think getting piercings all over your body is just a sign of teenage angst and rebellion, think again. In Malaysia and Singapore, some Hindu sects see it as a sign of devotion and penance. Enter Taipusam, the festival where piercing through the pain is trendy. The festival is celebrated in January or February and is dedicated to Lord Murugan, the Hindu god of war. It commemorates when Murugan's mother gave him a divine spear to defeat an evil demon, and there's no other way to celebrate a divine smackdown than sticking sharp objects into your skin. The festival features prayers, dances, and most notably, piercings that would make even the edgiest teenager blush. The pain of getting pierced is already bad enough, but you'd also have to give up meat weeks before the festival if you wanted to take part in the ceremonial piercings. On the festival day, you impale your tongue, cheeks, and skin with skewers, hooks, and mini spears, making you look like a human pincushion. Devoted followers see this practice as a way to show gratitude and seek divine blessings. These piercings aren't just for show, because they symbolize the ability to transcend pain, with a bit of help from Lord Murugan, who doubles as a godly anesthesiologist. As gruesome as the practice may sound, the festival has an electric atmosphere. It's become a tourist attraction that turns devotion into a fiercely entertaining event. Walking on fire. It may be a viral stunt for today's social media daredevils, but firewalking is a norm for different cultures worldwide. You'd think it's just some bizarre religious practice deeply rooted in tradition, but it's not just for likes, because it's got centuries of history behind it. Usually, the festival or ceremony involves people strolling barefoot across a bed of hot coal or glowing embers. It's not a magic trick, but a ritual practiced in places like India, Greece, and Fiji. If your yoga class can make you believe in the power of hot stones, you'd probably try the whole foot spa experience. Most often, firewalking isn't just a show of bravery, but a spiritual challenge. You're essentially proving your devotion and showing penance in this test of faith. In some practices, it's the hottest new trend for soul detox. The purer your soul, the closer you are to the divine. At least that's what the priests say. So next time someone asks about your wellness routine, tell them you're considering intense heat therapy. But it's not always about proving your bravery or ability to withstand the pain. In other countries, firewalking is done at weddings for the hot-footed thrill of blessing the couple and scaring evil spirits away. Because nothing says happily ever after like a bit of heat to keep those nasty guests off the dance floor. Overall, firewalking is both a physical feat that proves courage and a profound act of faith and communal bonding across diverse cultures. People who go through the challenge often describe a heightened sense of spirituality and personal development, believing they overcame a literal trial by fire. But they can't be too thrilled about their crispy feet. Snake handling. The Holiness Pentecostal churches took a Bible passage too literally when they were told to handle serpents and drink poison. But instead of sipping on a lethal cocktail, you'd be handling a rattlesnake, treating it like a puppy to prove your devotion to God's protection. While not practiced in all Holiness Pentecostal churches in the US, certain groups make their Sunday services much more interesting by adding a splash of venomous danger. You walk into the church as the congregation sings hymns with their hands raised to the heavens, but the priest pulls out a rattlesnake, passing it around like it was the offertory box. So if you're a member of this church, you'd better get the anti-venom ready if you don't have a PhD in serpent charming. Now, they do this because the Bible says that they need to handle serpents and drink poison without getting harmed if they are true believers. It may be a literal interpretation of a book written over 2,000 years ago, but these people are so devout to God that they're willing to take these writings word for word. The practice started in the early 20th century, becoming a local daredevil stunt for those risk-loving pastors. However, for them, it was about demonstrating absolute trust in God's divine protection, as they believed that a rattlesnake wouldn't kill them if their faith were strong enough. Then again, snakes don't really care who your God is. One bite from a venomous serpent and it's an express trip to the emergency room, or at worst, to an early meeting with God. While local authorities have tried their best to outlaw snake handling in religious services, these churches still fight for their right to play with their dangerous noodles under the guise of religious freedom. Let's just hope their insurance covers acts of God and snake bites.